The original definition of popular sovereignty came from the political theory created by and subject to the will of the people. However, in this time period, it focused on the right of Americans in a newly organized territory to decide by vote of their territorial legislator whether or not slavery should be permitted there. This concept was associated with politicians such as Lewis Cass and Stephen Douglas.
The Kansas-Nebraska Act was delivered in 1854 by Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois. The proposed territory of Nebraska would be sliced into two territories, Kansas and Nebraska. Their status regarding slavery would be settled by popular sovereignty. It presumably would lead Kansas to becoming a slave state and Nebraska a free state. This act would negate the sacred Missouri Compromise of 1820, since the territory was north of the 3630 line. The North regarded the repeal of this compromise as intolerable breach of faith, and they would henceforth resist all future Southern demands of slave states. The Kansas-Nebraska Act would increase tensions between the North and the South, and help pave the way for civil war.
The Lincoln-Douglas debates of 1858 were a series of 7 debates between Abraham Lincoln, the Republican candidate, and the incumbent Stephen A. Douglas, a Democrat, for an Illinois seat in the United States Senate. Because U.S. senators were elected by state legislators at that time, Lincoln and Douglas were campaigning for their parties to win control of the Illinois legislature. The winner would gain a significant advantage in the upcoming election. The debates included many topics pertaining to issues that the candidate would likely face in his seat in office.
I suppose that the real difference between Judge Douglas and his friends, and the Republicans on the contrary, is that the judge is not in favor of making any difference between slavery and liberty. That he is in favor of eradicating, pressing out of view, the question of preference in this country for free or slave institutions.
In May 1856, Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts gave a long and hearty two-day speech named The Crime Against Kansas. He described excesses that occurred there and the South's complicity in them. Only some of what he said was true. Senator Andrew P. Butler of South Carolina was a specific target of that speech, but he was not present when it was given. Several days later, Butler's nephew, Congressman Preston Brooks, attacked Sumner with a cane while he was seated at his desk in the Senate chamber. Sumner was beaten into unconsciousness, rendering him incapable of resuming his duties for more than 3 years.
This is blasphemy! This is madness! Madness. This is Sparta!